Good evening, I'm John Carroll, filling in for Emily Rooney. Tonight, bilingual education in Massachusetts comes under fire. Plus, a cranberry farmer gets bogged down in a wetlands dispute, and the author of a book on legendary theater critic George G. Nathan. But first, it's a debate that simmered in the Commonwealth for over 30 years, namely how the state can best educate its bilingual children. That debate was played out at the State House today. On one side, California millionaire Ron Unz, who led successful ballot campaigns to eliminate traditional bilingual programs in California and Arizona, and came to Boston today to do the same for Massachusetts. On the other side, critics who say the proposal is anti-children and anti-immigrant. The bilingual education battle took center stage at the State House today, with both sides out swinging over a potentially divisive ballot campaign.
I certainly believe that the children of Massachusetts will improve their test scores in the same way if this measure gets on the ballot and passes.
California millionaire Ron Unz came to the Commonwealth to announce his support for a ballot question aimed at replacing the current bilingual teaching system with a new one, namely a one-year, all-or-nothing English immersion curriculum. Opponents say forcing immigrant children into English-only classes could hurt their ability to learn.
The good citizens of Massachusetts will see this referendum, and they will see Mr. Unz for what it is. It's nothing more than divisive politics. It's nothing to do with really educating children.
Legislators on both sides are jumping in to reform the system, like Representative Antonio Cabral, who is proposing a modified bilingual education program where non-native and native English speakers are taught in the same classroom.
The main objective, or the main goal of TVE, is to teach English, but utilizing the strength of that student, which is his home language, for him or her to continue their academic development on math, science, social studies, history. So when they finally transition to mainstream, they are not 3 to 5 years behind.
Senator Glodis, who supports the ballot initiative, has proposed a bill similar to the California proposition that ended bilingual education, and Glodis says in California it's working.
Since that bill has been incorporated in California, test scores have gone up 20, 50, and sometimes 100% for bilingual students.
Ya saben que estamos preparando para...
Teachers like third-grade bilingual teacher Mary Guerrero say a single bilingual education program doesn't necessarily benefit all kids.
Different students respond well to different programs. It's not like it's one size fits all when it comes to bilingual education, just like it is for any type of education.
And when it really comes down to it, all sides say it's about getting bilingual students to learn.
When I write a word like it's not supposed to be, they correct it for me, and I read it, and I go like, oh, now I understand.
And with me now are Ron Unz, the National Chairman of English for Children, Kathleen Dawson, a teacher at Charlestown High School, and Representative Jarrett Barrios of Cambridge, who opposes the ballot initiative and supports a modified version of the current system. Ron Unz, let me start with you, since you're our guest here in Massachusetts. You've been successful in California, Arizona. I think you've got an initiative going in Colorado. Why Massachusetts? Why here? Are we that bad off here?
Well, yeah, I mean, from all the reports I've read, the bilingual programs here are just as bad as the ones in California and Arizona and these other states. Furthermore, Massachusetts was the first state in America 30 years ago to establish a statewide bilingual education mandate. It's been copied by many other states, and getting rid of the program here, I think, would have huge national implications.
It's like knocking off a Kennedy for the Republicans. Let me ask you this. How would this work, the immersion program? A student goes into a class with all the other students, takes English classes in English, takes math classes in English, takes science classes in English?
Well, it's a little bit complicated. I mean, the vast majority of the immigrant students we're talking about were born in the United States or came here when they're very young. We're talking about students who enter school when they're generally 5 or 6 years old. At that age, under this initiative, they would be placed in a short-term, intensive, sheltered English immersion program for a few months or a year to teach them English as quickly as possible. Once they learned English, they would be moved into regular classes with all the other students.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like this would be a good program. We have a situation here where the students in the bilingual education classes, according to critics, have the lowest MCAS scores, have the lowest college acceptance, have the highest dropout rate. Why not give them this sort of crash course and then move them right into the mainstream?
I assume you're directing that to me.
I'm sorry, Representative Barrios, yes, I'm sorry.
I guess it's very simple. You're absolutely right. And Mr. Unz is correct when he says we have to do something for bilingual children. He's incorrect when he says it's complicated, or at least his proposal is complicated. It's very simple. 1 year, sink or swim. And in the same way that the current law is flawed, our current law, the transitional bilingual education, is flawed because it's only one program that school districts are allowed to administer, Mr. Unz's program is flawed because just like the current law, it's one size fits all. Children come in different sizes, shapes, and colors. Most importantly, children who enter our schools come here at different ages. Mr. Unz is right. Young children, 5 or 6, can be immersed very successfully at early ages. Children who come here at later ages, the mind works differently. You acquire language at a different rate at that time, and immersion is not the most appropriate way. So why tie the hands of a school district? Why not let school districts have a variety of programs? What I've been proposing, and we've been able to get a lot of folks on board, is a compromise, something which allows different types of programs for different types of students. Another point I want to make is separate from the age difference, that children come from different countries with vastly different educational experiences. We have a child in my district who just came from Switzerland. Now that child speaks German and French and is now learning English. That child is at grade level in science, social studies, and math. Another child,
there's a disparity.
Another child comes from El Salvador, the same age, but with bare literacy in their native language of Spanish. Those two children shouldn't be treated the same way, and one size fits all, whether it's Mr. Unz's or the current law, does that. That's not right.
Kathleen Dawson, let me ask you. You had an English immersion program, did you not, when you were in school, or do you have experience with them?
Yes, and I was in a total immersion program. But again, I think there is a difference as far as age, because I did come at an early age. But the one disadvantage of that, as where I learned English and, you know, excelled in English, I lost my language. And I feel that that was a very crucial loss for me culturally, in my confidence as well. But just the whole idea that I couldn't keep my language, I think was a loss for me intellectually.
This is one of the objections, Ron, and another objection is that this is all very Darwinian, that it's sort of survival of the fittest, and if you don't make it when you get tossed into the mainstream, then you've pretty much lost your chance. What's the accommodation for that?
The thing is, you have to look at the details of the initiative. The initiative doesn't say that all students have to be put in English immersion programs. It allows exception waivers. So, for example, especially for older students who might actually benefit from a bilingual program, their parents can apply for a waiver to put them in a bilingual program. It also indicates that if a child requires more time in the immersion program before being mainstream, that's fine also. In other words, most children, especially 5 or 6-year-olds, probably a few months or at most a year is enough. Other children, maybe a little bit older, might require 1.5 years or even 2 years, and that's perfectly fine.
This is the problem. Actually, I'm sorry. I want to just the problem with what Mr. Unz is saying is that it may work in theory, but reality, you know, this Pollyanna theory is nice, but reality says that a school district which is not required to offer anything, when a parent goes for a waiver, they're going to find, well, there's nothing for them to waive into. And school districts that are having to do Prop 2.5 overrides and making hard decisions on money aren't going to have people waiting around for these parents. The reality is his program is not going to allow children, especially older children, to succeed. They're going to drop out, and in that sense, it's anti-child and it's anti-immigrant.
Well, Kathleen, you've been on the ground. You know the reality of this. What works in a classroom?
Well, I know that as a math teacher, I can't teach them the content if they don't understand the English. And I do understand that, you know, students could get a waiver if they're at the high school level. But that, to me, then sounds like it's a compromised program, meaning that there's many options according to the student's needs. And when you say, you know, students at a young age could be immersed in the program, what I'm concerned about is even when they're 5 and 6, if they're totally immersed in an English program, my question is then what's happening to the rest of their content development? Is that being taught via their language, home language, or through English, and how?
I mean, again, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the point the representative made about whether this program would work well in theory but not in practice is an interesting one. But it has worked in California. In other words, when the initiative was on the ballot a few years ago in California, many of these same arguments were made against it. It still passed overwhelmingly. And the results are that the test scores of over 1 million immigrant children in California have gone up by an average of 40% in less than 2 years. And that includes those districts which have resisted implementing the initiative. Those districts that have most strictly and completely complied with the measure, gotten rid of all their bilingual programs, have doubled their test scores in less than 2 years. And in particular, an individual who was superintendent of one of those districts, who had been for 30 years a supporter of bilingual education, who opposed the initiative but implemented, said his children's success convinced him. And he now is a born-again convert to English immersion. He admits he was wrong for 30 years, and he was the founder of the California Association of Bilingual Educators.
Representative Barrios, last word.
It's very important to note that our own State Department of Education looked at Mr. Unz's statistics and thoroughly discredited them. What they found was it has not been in effect long enough to know. And importantly, some of the numbers playing, I guess they kind of concluded were fuzzy math. I don't disagree. We need to commit more resources. We need to give more choices to these children. One size fits all, replacing another one size fits all is not the answer.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Kathleen, this is going to rage on for a while, especially if it goes on the ballot, so we'll be revisiting it. Representative Jarrett Barrios, Kathleen Dawson, Ron Unz, thanks very much for being here. And when we continue, a local cranberry farmer says the EPA is all wet.